And that's been a really helpful and a big shift for me to be more focused and be way more productive.
Welcome to the Real Estate Investing School podcast. I'm your host, Joe Jensen. Our guest today is Lisa Moore. Now, Lisa, she got started in multifamily investing through house hacking, her first home back in 2017. Together with her husband, she currently owns 19 doors across 8 different properties and is a limited partner on a 192-unit syndication in North Carolina. She was able to quit her corporate job in 2021 and has since invested heavily in networking and education to pursue her goals in acquiring larger multifamily assets. Being the VP of her local real estate investment association has given her the opportunity to share her passion for real estate with others in person, and is happy to have the opportunity to share with the digital world and all of you listening today on the podcast. So welcome, Lisa. That's quite the resume for just a few years in the game.
Yeah, it's been a busy few years, but it's been good. So
yeah, that's awesome. So you've done like 11 deals in the past 6 years. We talk about if you could just do a deal a year, you'd be set. You're well past that. And the deals haven't been small, it sounds like.
Yeah, we, my first one was in 2017 and had some personal things for a couple of years. We started buying again in 2020, and it was we just kept finding properties to buy and kept going. So we house hacked quite a few of them, and anytime we could find something that worked and numbers were what we wanted, we were going forward and buying it. So it was
That's
busy, but it was
awesome.
good.
So you said you're house hacking quite a few of them. Maybe break down, not super in depth, but maybe like you can go as deep as you want, pardon me, but how, when you're house hacking, what are you looking for in a house hack and how many of them have you done?
So it depends in different stages. So the first house that I was buying when we were house hacking, the plan was to rent out a bedroom. I was single. I didn't want a big giant house, but I knew that I wanted to offset some of my expenses because I knew it was going to be more expensive, owning a home than renting. And I wanted to be able to offset some of that. So, and that one I was just having a spare bedroom. I did it on Airbnb. So I'd have the ability, when my friends and family were visiting, I'd have a spare room and not have to deal with any guests being there. But if I didn't have somebody visiting, I actually had a lot of fun. I met some really cool people house hacking that way.
That's cool. I just want to point out, like, just because that's almost become like an unheard of, like archaic way of doing Airbnb, which is the original like that's what it was designed around. Like you go stay with somebody and they make you breakfast, like an air bed and breakfast,
Yeah.
So you did that.
Yeah. You don't hear of a lot of people doing that now. Most of it is they're buying a place strictly to do as an Airbnb, where for me, like I knew I wanted to get into owning property, and I knew that was going to be the best way to reduce my cost and, have lower housing expenses. And that's something that, when people are asking about getting into real estate and how to do it, I always tell them, I said, house hack. So
I love that.
Yeah, it's a minor inconvenience and a minor privacy to lose, in my opinion, to get into real estate, because I knew that I was going to do that for a year and a half, and then move into another one. And kind of the plan was to build that way. But the other house hacking we've done is the current house we live in. We didn't want to share space with anyone. I met my husband, we got married. So at that point, we were like, we don't want to share space all the time, but we still wanted that benefit of house hacking. So when we were looking for the house we live in now, we were looking for something that either had a mother-in-law or a property, my husband's a GC, that we could add one into. So this house was perfect because we had a separate entrance to the basement. It sort of already had a kitchen and a bathroom. It had one bathroom. They advertised a kitchen, which was basically they had some cabinets in one room. No water, no nothing. I was like, it's a bit of a stretch for a kitchen, but okay.
Yeah.
But we could also block off the yard. So we wanted our privacy of not having to share a yard. So we were also able to put a fence up. So when they're coming and going, it's like any neighbor that's next to you. They're
That's
not, we don't
awesome.
share a yard, things like that. So for us, it was a great find to be able to still have that house hack, but not be sharing any space or yard.
Yeah, and I love because house hacking is such a common thing or concept nowadays. But like you said, there's so many ways to approach it. From like you said, you guys carefully picked a place that would allow you the least interaction and most privacy that you wanted, almost like you're in a condo or a townhome. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yep.
yeah, we share a wall, but that's it. Which
Yeah.
is an option. All the way to when you were first doing it, where you're literally like meeting strangers, like, "Hi, welcome to my home." Like, don't wake me up in the morning, you know? And you said you had some cool experiences with that, actually meeting interesting people?
Yeah, we did when it was just the bedroom, and I did have some I had a guy, I can't remember, somewhere in South America, and he was here near the holidays. I can't remember if it was over the holidays, but I had some friends over, and he was there for like 10 days for skiing. He came back, and we were just
Hanging
partying,
out.
and he was like teaching my friends how to dance in the living room, and
Love that.
it was a lot of fun. So
Yeah, I just think it's so cool. Like it's so customizable, and that's one thing I always talk about. How I love real estate. It's so customizable. I mean, we're gonna get to you're talking about buying syndications in multi hundred units, and all these different things in multifamily, which we're gonna get to. But it can literally be as simple as like you're like, dude, you could literally rent your couch on Airbnb for $50 and meet someone interesting and make some money. And it's just like it gets the ball rolling. Like, oh, anything's possible. Like the barrier to entry is so simple and easy now. And you could even be renting a place and Airbnb out your couch. Like, I mean, you could check your lease, but like whatever, you know what I mean? It's just like it's just crazy how simple it is to get started. And once that ball gets rolling, like you did a house hack in 2017. Now you're 19 doors in just a few years. And you had a couple year break where you sounded like you guys weren't even doing that much.
yeah, it really, to me, like when people talk about getting into real estate, and so many people are like, yeah, I want to get into real estate. Like, I'm going to start wholesaling. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I mean, if you want to, I said, but that's, to me, wholesaling, that's not a quick, easy entry into real estate. And
Sure.
it can be, but if you're looking to build a machine and stuff like that, can take time. Where, when I was buying my first property, I had a W-2. So yes, I did have some extra time, but I didn't have, like now we do this full time. So I have all the time in the world where if we wanted to start building something, but to me, the house hacking, like you need a place to live. And, I'm here in Salt Lake City where your rents are expensive. I mean, some
Hmm.
of our tenants pay more than any of our mortgages.
Mm.
And to be able to own a property and have your housing costs either equal if you were renting, but now you own that property, or drastically reduce. I mean, our tenants pay 93% of all of our housing expenses at this
That's
property.
awesome.
So to me, like you need a place to live. Why not get into a place? And when there's so many options with first time home buyers and small down payments, 5%, some even have as low as like 3.5% down payments. There's just so many options that if you want to get into a property, if you're willing to make those sacrifices, you really can get into a property house hack and get that ball rolling to be able to own some real estate.
Yeah, something I've done in the past, and I've started toying with doing again is I'll rent out my place when I travel, right? So I'll have it on Airbnb, but it's only listed available when I'm going to be out of town anyway, and then I get paid to go on my trips. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's like it's just kind of there's so many ways to do it and still hold your boundaries. Like if you don't want to see people or if you don't want to share it, you can choose where the boundaries set and then get into it. So you started getting into it, you started doing house hacking. Was this kind of like an unintentional, like, hey, we can make a few extra dollars? Or was this like I want to get into real estate. I see real estate as an investment opportunity and this powerful tool, but I don't know where to start. So this is my beginner, or like, what was your approach into it, getting into real estate as an investment?
So I knew that real estate, like just having researched and things like that, and knowing the power of real estate and owning properties. So I knew that I wanted to get into it. And I moved here in 2016, and I knew, wanted to take a year to figure out where I wanted to be, but I knew that I wanted to get into real estate and start buying real estate. And I also knew that I wanted to house hack, which that wasn't even a term back then,
Hmm.
I don't think. Like I didn't know Bigger Pockets or real estate investors associations or any of these
Mm,
groups when I first started. So I was just, I knew that if I could rent out my room on Airbnb, it would reduce my costs. And I knew that that would be able to get me started. And I knew that I could stay in that property. You know, you stay in for a year, you move into another one, you can get another primary resident uh, mortgage. So that was another way that we really were able to buy properties quickly because we were willing to move and willing to house hack. So
I love that, and people who listen have heard me, say that the power of the primary. We talk about house hacking, where it's like, oh, I can hack and getting extra income with the house I'm living in, right? Renting out a room or doing a duplex or mother-in-law, whatever. You're renting it out, and so you're making additional income than you normally would have made, which is really what most people think of as a house hack. Oh, I'm making money off of my primary home. But the real power I see is the power of the primary, what I call the pop, right? The power of the primary, where you can go get, like you said, 5.5% down or 5% down, 3.5%, even zero. If you go to like this USDA, like agricultural areas and stuff, like you can get 0% down. There's programs like I just saw something on Rocket Mortgage doing something for 1% down on primaries. It's like when you can get all the home in your name and put none of the money in, like that's crazy powerful. You know what I mean? That's really, what else can you do where you put nothing into it and truly own a multi-100,000 or $1 million asset? It's crazy.
yeah, and the better financing, the interest rates as well, on top of
Oh
the
yeah.
better down payments, the interest rates as well. I mean, the interest rates that we get as for our primary residents are
Way better.
significantly better than anything we buy as an investment. So, I mean, up until quitting my W-2 a couple years ago, I mean, I think we've got 6 mortgages that are all primary residents. So they're all
Good for
like
you.
4% interest rate because we were willing to move when we were willing to make that sacrifice, but to us it didn't feel like a sacrifice to get us to where we are. So
Yeah. And for anybody listening to this, like, oh, well, I'm not willing to do that sacrifice. It's like, well, what you're going to sacrifice something. Like, what are you willing to sacrifice? 9 to 5, 8 hours a day for 40 more years? Like, what you're going to sacrifice? Like, just you get maybe think a little more holistically about what you're sacrificing, as opposed to like, oh, I don't want to have someone in my basement because they might cook salmon and I don't want to smell it, or whatever the issue is.
well, and that's what always gets me. I've had people say like, "Oh yeah, I never want to rent out my basement," and I'm just going, "You live in an apartment complex with people above you, below you, and on both sides of you that you don't have any control
Yeah,
over."
that
So
is your
that's what always
basement.
gets me when people say they don't want a house hack, or I can understand maybe not wanting a bedroom within the same space, especially if you have kids.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I have single friends where they don't have kids. And like, I never want to rent a basement, and that I'm just going like, but you already share a wall with multiple people, in some cases four, above, below, and both sides, and you have no control over who those people are. Where
Mhm.
me, I'm like, I'll take my house hack and I can choose who's in the basement, so we can make sure that somebody down there is somebody that we like and is gonna fit with us. And if they're like, yeah, we love to party on Saturday nights and have a ton of people over, it's like, you're probably not gonna fit. So we
Mhm.
can choose who's there to make sure that it is. We've had amazing tenants in our basement that we invite up when we're having barbecues because they're, we are
'Cause
able
you
to
chose
choose
them,
who they
right? You
are.
gotta pick them
So
out, which is great.
yeah. In an apartment complex, you don't get to choose who your neighbor is. So you hope that they're quiet and you hope that they're good neighbors. But yeah, it always amazed me, that mindset. It's just like, but you don't get to choose who your neighbors are in your apartment complex, and you're
Mhm.
sharing walls with them. So why aren't you willing to share a wall in a house that you own with a tenant that you get to choose?
Yeah. No, I love it. And even if it's like you're in single family, where it's like, oh, they're like, oh, well, I don't live in an apartment. It's like, yeah, but so do this what you did for a few years and hop around and have the headache. But then now you own 7, 6, of these assets with amazing loan terms on them. And it's like that's gonna set you up to not have to even have a job, which you were able to quit your W-2 in 2021. It's like, would someone rather work 20 years on a job they'd prefer not to work, or hop around houses for 5 years? It's like that's what, yeah, but they're both a sacrifice, but like pick your poison.
Yeah.
I love that. So how did you jump from that though? So we're talking about these little house hack stuff, but you've got 19 doors and 8 different properties. So how were these multifamily house hacks, or did you jump into bigger stuff, or what was kind of the move after the house hacks?
We actually house hacked a triplex.
Yeah.
Uh, that was the final one in 2021 when we decided that I wanted to quit my job, the company that I was working for, which, I did enjoy. My background is financial analysis. Uh,
Mm.
we were working remote with COVID, like most companies, and they had said, we're going to do some sort of hybrid when everyone comes back in the office. We don't know what, but then they sent out a letter in June saying everyone back in the office full time, no exceptions. Here's the dates based on your position. And said to my husband, I'm like, all right. I was like, I'm done. I said, I'm not and I also supported a team globally. So I
Wow.
had to drive into the office to sit on a Zoom with people all over the world. I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't even meet with people in the office. So
Yeah.
and they weren't willing to be any flexible at all. It was full time, no exceptions. So that was when I was like, all right, we're done. So being a finance background and doing budgeting and things like that, I really scrubbed our budget and looked at what do we need and how much more money do we need,
Mm.
not to replace cash flow or not to replace my W-2 income. Like that's something that a lot of people always say is like, well, I need to replace my W-2 income. And I
Uh,
always challenge them
yes,
because I
I love
you
this thought. Going with this, I'm like, I
yeah,
know what you're talking about. I'm like, I'm so stoked on it.
I was like, do you really need to replace all of your income? Like, do you spend every single penny of your income towards necessities? Or are you driving a really expensive car that for a few years, hey, trade that in and get something that doesn't have a payment? Are you living in a really expensive location that you could cut back or house hack? Are you going out to the bars 3, 4 days a week and spending hundreds of dollars a week on that stuff? Like, a lot of people think they need to replace their income, but if they actually really dig into their budget and see what they spend, and I was also willing to forego putting money into a 401k and things like that for a few years. Most of our money now, we still have some investments in the stock market, but most of it goes into real estate.
Yeah.
But we were willing to sacrifice that, knowing, okay, like, yes, we will be taking a step back. I won't have that, you know, free money to not free money, but just money to spend as freely, and we'll lose that easy financing. But when I really dug into our budget, it's like, I don't need to replace all of my W-2. Like, we only
Mhm.
need X amount more to sustain us and, live comfortably, but we're not at the point where we were with a W-2, but we knew that having that freedom and having that time to spend everything in real estate, we would get back to where we were and far surpass what I ever would have made in a W-2 income. I mean, the
Yeah.
ability to make money in real estate is endless.
It is, and
There's no
yeah.
cap to how much you can make. In a
Yeah, that's the cool,
W-2,
the potential, right? It's just
yeah.
like, yeah, like you see the W-2, you're what? They're gonna have some sort of salary cap.
Yeah, I mean, short of you becoming, Google CEO and you're making an absurd amount of money, but for the average person, and I was, making six figures and doing very well, but you still have a cap. Real estate, as much as you want to work and as much as you want to put into it, as much as you want to buy, your income can just keep going up and up and up. So when people
Yeah,
say they need to replace your income, I always tell them, like, sit down and really look at your budget, really look at what your expenses are. What can you cut back? What can you maybe not have for a few years to be able to quit if you want to do this full time and be able to build up your real estate? Because most people, if they really dig into their budget, probably don't need to replace all of their income
I love
to
that.
be able to survive and do this full time for a few years.
Yeah, and I think that's really powerful, and it's funny because it's like once you have a taste of freedom, your priorities change, right? And if we go back to your working remotely from home, you got this. We a lot of people did in over COVID. Like, hey, here's this taste of freedom. You can wear your pajamas. You can like wake up on when you want to. You don't have to rush through rush hour and traffic. Like, it just gave everybody this taste of like I'm in control of my life. And then when they try to take you back, it's like, never mind. Like I quit. Like I'm out. Like I tasted freedom. And same thing with the income. You're like, okay, I'm used to making, let's say 100,000 a year. It's like, well, what if you cut that down to 60,000 a year? but you weren't having to work anymore. Like you're saying, like, what if you don't have to replace the 100,000, cut it in half maybe, but have freedom, and you'll realize like, wow, I would rather have freedom than an extra 50 grand, because then I can do whatever I want. And if I want, I can spend that time building even more wealth. And then I can have the money and the time, but I'm doing it on my time, on my watch, on my call. I love the definition of freedom I heard. I think it was Murray Angelou or somebody, and it's not freedom from obligation, it's freedom to choose your obligations. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're still working, you're still doing stuff, you're still doing what is important to you, but not on someone else's time scale, you know?
Yeah, that freedom of time to spend our days doing whatever we want. Like, if we don't want to work and we don't want to buy any more properties, then we know that our income will, it'll slowly increase with, increasing rents over the years and stuff. But we also know that if we want to bust ass and buy more and put our time into it, we can do that. And we know that that's going to increase our income. So having that direct correlation of how hard we work directly impacts what we get out of it, to
Mhm.
me is a very empowering thing, and it's a very motivating thing. As I said, I did enjoy my W-2, and the company I worked for was a great company and stuff like that. But as hard as I worked, yeah, I'd get a raise, but most places, like, you have a cap each year. Like, you might get 3-5%, but they're not going to be giving you 15, 20, 30% raises year over year. So as hard as you work, you might get recognition, but you're not going to get necessarily those big raises. Where now with real estate, the harder I work, I see a direct correlation of more properties, more money in our pocket, and it makes us want to work more. I mean, we're definitely like semi obsessed with real estate, and we're always talking about it, and it doesn't feel like work because it's something that we enjoy doing, and we
Yeah.
see a direct benefit in our life the more we do and the more we are involved with real estate and things like that. So we love
Well,
it.
and then when you think about lifestyle trajectory, I think that's something people don't think about a lot. Like, let's say the 9 to 5 job, right? You do more, you get a bigger raise, you get more responsibility, you get a bigger raise, you get more responsibility. It's like the trajectory you're going to is less and less freedom, more and more obligation. That's why you're getting the higher pay. And now you're responsible for the whole team. You're the CEO of Google, you mentioned, right? Like, they don't have the freedom to just be like, peace for 2 weeks, for 2 months. Like, there's so much obligation for them to show up and do what's needed, that it's like, and all the roles up there, it's like, what trajectory are you building? If you go down this road, are you building the lifestyle trajectory you want? Maybe the money trajectory is on point, but is the lifestyle trajectory? And that's what's exciting about real estate. You might be going ham like you are right now, where you're like, I don't care, we have the time, we like, let's just go hard. And you're like, I'm working more than ever, but my lifestyle trajectory is leading me to more freedom and more of the lifestyle I want, even whether it's happening slowly or it's happening fast. It's about, I don't know. I just think people don't always think about lifestyle trajectory. It's like, what ladder are you climbing? And when you get to the top, you're like, oh shoot, I got to the top, but was this the ladder I even meant to climb?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they just like, well, if I, work that W-2 and then I'll get to 60, 65, and then I can retire and I'll have all this money and stuff like that. But one, not everyone makes it to retirement. And then are you still going to have the same, like, we spent almost 6 months this year traveling, and, we love to backpack and snowmobile and ski and dirt bike and do these physical things. And it's, a lot of times we're traveling places to do these. And I'm thinking, yeah, you wait till you're 65. Like, are you still going to be able to do those things that you love now? Like, I think, by the time I get to that age, I may not, probably won't have the energy and the ability to do all the things that we do now. So we want to take advantage. It's finding that balance. We want to take advantage of being able to travel and do the things we love while still building our real estate and having that freedom. Like, we can work as hard as we can and 80 hours a week if we wanted to, and then take time off and things like that. So just that freedom of time and freedom of lifestyle and building what we want is definitely our driving force and what we love about it. So
Yeah, it's like, is the success I'm working towards going to give me more money and more time, or is it just going to give me more money and less time? Think
yeah.
about that, and I've been in positions like, man, the more I work, the more I'm gonna lose myself. If I win, I'm losing. It's like, wait a second, I got to think about this more multifaceted, you know? Let's talk about one cool thing though, with your financial background, the job you were doing though, you said you're budgeting and understanding finances. How did that carry over to real estate and analyzing numbers? It's just so much of real estate. It's like run the numbers, You talk about that carryover.
So yeah, I mean, I had never, as I said, I didn't know anything about real estate when I was getting into it. I didn't know of the resources that I have now with local RIAs and bigger pockets and all these podcasts and things like that. And I had never read a book on underwriting deals, but just having the background that I had with financial analysis and budgeting and things like that, I was fortunate that my brain just works that way. So, when I was looking at properties and analyzing properties, I I just kind of intuitively from my background knew how I wanted to look at those numbers. And I actually read Real Estate by the Numbers
Mm,
by, I think it's Jay Scott
Dave,
and Dave Myers,
yeah.
which anyone who wants to learn how to run numbers, that's a really good book. But I was reading through that, and I just kind of built my own underwriting model in Excel because I didn't have anything else. And it has been interesting seeing, some things that I just kind of built myself, and it's like, oh, sweet, I did that the right way. Like that's how they
Hmm.
also suggest doing it. Like there's things that I've had to adjust and other metrics and things that I've never thought of to look at, but it definitely was a huge help having that finance background and knowing how to look at numbers and how to analyze things, making sure that we're buying properties that we're going to cash flow and factoring in savings for things and maintenance and vacancies and things like that. So it definitely helped big time. But for those that don't have that, like I said, that Real Estate by the Numbers book is a really, really good book that goes into detail on numbers and underwriting and stuff. So
Yeah, I love that book. And I love the way Dave Myers approaches real estate in general. Like we've had him on the show here but just like he's very, I mean, very analytical. He's a numbers guy, but I just love the way he approaches it so much. He has a new book coming out about like just kind of your goals and the kind of the lifestyle trajectory we are talking about as well, which I think people should implement. But I love that you said how you built out your own Excel sheet of just like how to run these numbers. And I'm a total nerd with that. Like I say, some people collect teacups or magnets or cars or whatever, and like I collect deal calculators. Like I'm like, let me see your deal calculator, and then I piece it all into mine. Like so I developed my own as well because I was like, I don't know how to do this, so I know I don't want to get burned here and here, and so I just started piecing it all together, and I created what I personally claim is the world's best asset analyzer. Humble opinion there, but all I did was piece together multiple pieces after I got mine. I was like, oh, well, what do they have? Ooh, what do they have? And then, and so anyway, I encourage people to do that. And the cool thing about creating your own is you understand it. Like you understand it really well. Like you know why each number is where it's at. And, sometimes when you just get somebody else's, you're looking and you're like, I don't understand anything on this. But
yeah,
when you develop it from scratch, you're like, I intricately, intimately know why each formula is the way it is. And it's more powerful, I think.
yeah, definitely. Like everyone's brain works differently on how
Hmm.
they process things and look at things. And yes, since I've been introduced to all these different podcasts and books and things like that, and I also always try and get any deal analyzer I can just to see what other people are doing. Um, and yeah, I mean, there's some that, people have said this is like the best deal analyzer. It's really good, blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at it and I'm just going like, my brain does not work the same way as this person. Like I was spending more time trying to figure out like
Hmm.
what they were doing and why. And it just wasn't, it didn't match with how my brain works and how I look at things. So I've been doing the same as you. As I get different deal calculators and things like that, I'll incorporate into mine and tweak and things like that. Like, oh, okay, I like this, and I can incorporate it into mine and use
Yeah.
that. But yeah, and that's one thing I would say to people too. Like, if you're trying to find a deal calculator and someone tells you this is the best calculator, you got to use this one.
Hmm.
But if you can't figure out how to use it, then it's useless.
Yeah.
So try different ones. Like there are quite a few free ones out there. There's some that don't cost that much. Like if you buy a book, you get a deal calculator with it. So there's a lot of resources. So I would definitely say if you're trying to learn how to run numbers and you're not an Excel person and you don't want to build from scratch, but you're really stuck trying to learn this one deal calculator, test out other ones. Like everyone's brain is different. Everyone understands things differently. And there's so many different ones out there that you got to find the one that matches with how you think and how you process things. Otherwise, you're just going to struggle. I mean, there's some that I've looked at and I just finally was like, nope, this might be the best one in the world, but it is not the best one for me because it does not match with how I think and how I process things.
I love that. I think that's huge. And the way you approach it will change over time, right? When you're first starting, you're thinking very much this way. Maybe it's cash flow focused. And so you get a calculator that's cash flow focused, and you develop yours on that. And then over time, you may shift it and make it more, total ROI focus of considering all the aspects of principal pay down, appreciation, and working those angles in, and that's okay. Like your strategy should change as you progress and mature in your career with investing and as your finances change. Like there's so many things, but like I say, if it doesn't go along with the way you're looking at it and what you're trying to accomplish, then yeah, readjust it or make your own. And people are afraid to make their own because they don't understand it. I'm like, that's why you should make your own. It's because until you understand it well enough to make your own, like you really don't understand it.
Yeah, if you can go and create something and really force yourself to learn, like you're going to understand how the numbers work and how they correlate with each other way more if you build something. And it doesn't even have to be, like some of these are for 300 unit syndications and you've got 15 different tabs and doing stuff. Like it doesn't have to be that. Like if you're just getting started, like you can learn the basics and basic cash on cash and a few like simple metrics. But yeah, if you build your own and go into Excel and kind of struggle through that, it really will help you understand the numbers so much more and give you a better understanding of how they relate and how, okay, when I change this number, this one gets affected. And if I change this, like you just really start to see how everything connects and how shifting things changes. So depending what you're looking for, what your goals are, and everyone's different in what they look for on, one deal could be perfect for me, but for you, you'd be like, ooh, that doesn't fit what I need. So you can see how it changes your cash on cash and ROI and different things and really see, okay, does this match with what my goals are, and having a better understanding of what levers you can pull when you're putting deals together and making offers and know, okay, if I change this, then I know that this number will change, and it just gives you such a better understanding of the numbers and how you can put deals together.
I love that. No, and it's like my asset analyzer is on version 7.1, and it's like so there was like a 1.1, 1.4, 1. 2.7. Like I kept adding and adding and adding. So years into it, it's funny because if you go back to the very very first version, it literally was just cash flow or cash and cash return. It's like, okay, what's my money in? What's my annual profit divided by the money in? And that was like the only formula on the sheet. And then it's just expanded and grown. I have all these like other metrics on there and cash flow margins and these and total ROIs. And I like just have so much stuff I don't even use on it. But it's just funny how far it's grown. But it, like say, start with what and start really basic and then add to it there. And, and it's funny that I don't know, I'm kind of excited as we're chatting about this just because it's something I haven't really thought about and verbalized this way. It's like how everybody should create their own. I felt like I had the best one. I'm like, hey, I share it with people, but I keep seeing people like, well, how does it work? How does this work? And how do I do that? And I'm like, you should just start your own if you don't get it. Cause I look at new ones that I don't always get. So anyway, I think there's a powerful thing. So that's the new thought. Anybody listening to this, like there's your takeaway. Go start your own deal calculator. Even if you have mine, even if you have Lisa's, even if you have 20 other people's, like just see how much you could do from scratch as a test to see like how much you truly understand the numbers.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So let's talk about you making the jump, right? So a lot of people talk about the dream, right? And a lot of people say the dream's dead, but of quitting your W-2 and living off of real estate. And people say, oh, that's not realistic. I mean, I hear what David Green, is kind of like, it's funny in the Bigger Pockets, like it used to be like that was it, cash flow, build your freedom, live off of it, fire, all the, and now it's kind of like, well, that's not very realistic. Go get a good job, build some true appreciation of wealth over time. And it's kind of been a different story. And obviously it's a lot harder to find cash flowing property right now. So there's a reason people are saying that. But you did it. So let's talk a little bit about that. You quit your job. You talked somewhat about, you're like, oh, maybe I don't need to replace the entire amount as long as I cover what I actually need. But can we dive into that big move for you?
Yeah. So yeah, like I had said earlier, we really just dug into our budget of what do we really need to to live on. And we were willing to give up going, my one of my things I love is traveling. And I said, okay, well, I'm willing to give up being able to do the big expensive vacations every year for a few years. And um, we both drive older cars. I have a 2010 4Runner. My husband has like a 2012 Ford F-150. Like, would we like a new vehicle? Yeah, but right now it's anytime we think of buying something or spending money on something, we're like, but this could be like a remodel in this unit, or like
Yeah.
this could be a new kitchen here. So we're at the point where we almost don't want to spend money on other things. It's always, but this could go towards real estate. And we just want to be putting everything back in that we can. But like I said, like figuring out your budget and really breaking that down, but also knowing that when I was doing it is okay, this is my plan. Like I'm going to quit, I'm going to do real estate full time. And a lot of people, get, worst case scenario. It's like, okay, well, what is your worst case scenario?
Mm,
So my worst case scenario was I quit and we aren't able to buy any more properties, or we're not able to build up any more cash flow, or something drastic happens and we have to sell all of our properties and now we have no income from real estate. Okay, what's my worst case scenario? Like I go back and get a job. Like
which is where I'm
the,
at
the
now.
it's like, yeah, it's
I'm
like, so
literally
worst
living worst
case.
case scenario.
Exactly. It's like my worst case is I end up back where I am right now. And
Love
like
that.
to me, that was a risk that it the bigger risk to me was not taking that chance. It's
Well,
like,
when you
okay, my
describe it
worst
that
case.
way, it's like it's become pretty clear.
Exactly.
It's
I'm
like,
like,
why would you not?
yeah. I'm like, okay, my worst case is I'm literally back in the same position in 1, 2, 3, 5 years. Like, okay, well, now I feel like I just have to do it because the only like everything else is a benefit. If my
Mhm.
worst case is being back where I am, everything else that happens is a benefit. Like
Yeah.
it is working out. We are buying more properties, things like that. So it was something that when you really look at it and like what is your worst case, short of you being in some extremely rare position where for you to get another job is so difficult because there's, almost no jobs in that field. I can't even think of a situation where there's a job so rare that you couldn't go and get another job. Like
Sure.
some might be a little more difficult, but most people will be able to go and get another job. And even if you couldn't find something in the same exact field, like there's always a job out there. So like your worst case is like, okay, because our other worst case was, all right, well, maybe I don't need to get a full-time job, but maybe we need to supplement a little bit. And I go and work at Home Depot or Lowe's. Then we also get a discount on anything we have to buy there. So it was like the just running through all the scenarios was also helpful because it really made us realize like our worst case really isn't that bad. Like our worst case is being back where I am.
Yeah, and then you
So I
look at
think
the upside, you're like, but the best case isn't, oh, I just, I'm living more frugally, but I have more freedom. That's the base level. It's like
yeah,
best case though is, like you said, literally the sky's the limit. I mean,
yeah,
people create these systems and they own hundreds and thousands of properties. You know what I mean? I look at like Ken McElroy and Kiyosaki and some of these guys have been doing this forever, and it's like, I mean, that's the upper limit. Like, there's not one.
exactly. So yeah, I mean for us, we're we're living the most frugal life right now that in our opinion we ever will because I we're not going to fail at what we want to do. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
know that we'll get to where we want to go and we'll keep growing and buying. So it's, if this is, and we even say this, it's like, if something was to happen, we could never buy anything again. It's like, we're still living a really good
Mm,
life.
I
And
love
even if
that.
we were like, we're never going to buy anything for whatever reason, if something happened, it's like, even if we had to stay where we are, like, I'll still choose this life over a 9 to 5 any day.
Yeah. And
So
let's talk about one thing you leverage with your 9 to 5, because this is a key thing when choosing when to exit your 9 to 5, right? One thing, obviously, the capital. There's income, right? And we're bringing in money, that helps. The other thing is the credit worthiness to be able to qualify for these house hacks. And you guys really took advantage. I mean, you did what, 6? You said you have like 6 of these loans, maybe even had more at one point overall. But that's really cool. Like, you were able to secure a lot of property and a lot of assets, using that qualification because you had the steady income. So the banks looked at you and like, oh yeah, she qualifies, we'll lend to her. You didn't just have one and walk away and go look blindly back and go, oh, now I can't qualify for anything. You qualified for a ton, and then you consciously knew that was going to adjust how your lending would go in the future. I don't know if you
yeah,
want
and
to share
we
anything on that. I just think that's a very key point that you guys did very consciously. I saw you mention it a couple times, already.
yeah, no, we 100%, like, we we maxed out my debt to income. So on top of like buying the properties and having the mortgages in my name of the primary residence, we also had equity in properties because we had done large value adds, and
Mm,
my husband had some properties that had equity in them. So we also were doing cash out refinances. We did a HELOC against the very first property that I bought in 2017.
right.
We took a HELOC out against it. We did cash out refinances against properties. So leading up to me quitting, we were doing everything we could to max out my debt to income. Like, I didn't want to leave until I knew that I had used every little ounce of my W-2 income. And obviously, yes, if I had stayed over the years making more money and our, appreciation and things like that, but we didn't want to do that. So we made sure that when I quit, like, I was on the phone with my mortgage guy, and we were selling a property, buying a property, doing a HELOC, and doing a cash out refinance. And he's like, all right, he's like, this will max you out. He goes, you won't be able to, until you pay down some mortgage and get a raise, like, this will max out your debt to
Mm.
income. He goes, we won't be able to do anything else. And I was like, okay.
Like, all
And
right, now is the
I was like,
time. Farewell.
and and the mortgage companies, they may ask if you have a job, but they don't ask, do you intend on keeping your job?
Which is so
So
funny.
yeah, so on the last one, so we had done the HELOC, we did a cash out, property was sold, so we're waiting to close on our triplex, and things were like getting delayed just with some due diligence and things like that. And when we finally were like ready to close, and it was like the day we had signed everything, and they can call and confirm that you still have a job up to funding.
Hmm.
So I could
Yep.
sign papers today, but if the mortgage doesn't fund until tomorrow, they can call up until they fund to find out, do you still have a job? Is it still at the same, like, they
Yep.
can still verify everything. So even though you've signed everything and you think that it's said and done, if it hasn't funded, they can still call and check and make sure that everything checks out.
I'm
So
pretty sure that
I
happened to me my very first deal. Like, there's
did
like
it.
a decade ago, and I'm almost positive I lost a job while in escrow, and I was like, I hope they don't check. I hope they don't check. I hope they don't check. And they ended up not checking. I got through, but they totally can. I was very nervous about it, because it barely
Yeah.
qualified anyway. I was this young 20-year-old, 24, and I was just like had never made money. Had this like barely stable income, and then I lost it mid escrow. I'm like, oh no. But yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really good point.
Yeah. So I was waiting. I'm like texting my mortgage guy. I'm like, has it funded yet? He's like, not yet. I'm like, has it funded yet? Like, I was waiting for him. He's like, yes, it is funded. Everything is official. And as soon as he said that, I was like, boss,
I
give me my
love that.
notice.
I think
So,
that's
but
a good
yeah.
rule of thumb. If anybody's wondering, well, when can I quit my job? It's like, not only, you run the numbers on your income, make sure you have enough. And like I said, not necessarily a full replacement, but enough. And then yeah, have I taken advantage of my loans, the leverage I can use with my job? And when you have, and you, or at least most of it, I think that's a great rule of thumb or something to shoot for. If nothing else, it'll help you buy more real estate, because you're like, your goal is to not over leverage, but leverage yourself, leverage as much as your debt will let you. And again, if for anybody listening, and I have these whole safe debt guidelines I can go into, like, you're doing this wisely. You're making sure this is all debt that's covered, it's self-sufficient, you have reserves set aside. So, it's vacant for 3 or 4 months, you're okay. Like these are common practices. So it's not over leveraged. You're not risky in any of this. It's very safe, it's very secure, but you're borrowing as much as you can from these banks. And that's why you feel comfortable doing it, is because it is all mitigated and self-sufficient.
Yeah, you definitely want to make sure you've got some savings and reserves. We had business savings, we had personal savings and things like that. So, yeah, I definitely wouldn't quit if you have no money and no reserves, and especially if you have a W-2 and you haven't utilized everything. Like, I definitely would say take as much advantage of
Yeah.
buying properties as you can. And that could even be like, if you can't find properties on your own, people are
Mm,
looking for credit partners.
yep.
So, you start networking with people in your area. And if you're not able to find, properties to buy, but you meet somebody that doesn't have a job and has properties they want to buy, we'll partner with them. Like, hey, I have a W-2. I can sign on the loan, and I can get us the financing for part of the deal. And start getting involved that way. I mean, that's
Yes.
another way that you can get involved if you have a W-2 income and either you don't have the time or whatever the reasons be, but find people that are looking to buy that need that credit and need those KPs to sign on their deals to get them that financing that they may not be able to get, or may not be able to get as good of financing as you can get with your W-2 income.
I love it. I love it, Lisa. Well, sweet. Well, there obviously we could chat about this stuff
Yeah.
forever, and only touch some things. I do want to dive into some of our final four questions. For those that want to be able to reach out to you or get a copy of your deal calculator that you've built, and after this call, we're definitely gonna have to swap calculators. Be nerds about that. But what's a good way for people to reach out or follow you?
Yeah, on Instagram, my Instagram is More Doors with Lisa. That's with two O's, Moore. More Doors with Lisa. And then Facebook, you can find me, Lisa Field Moore. And then if you want to email me, my email is info@morelifecapital.com.
And what are you looking for if there was something that you're like, man, I could use help on this, like finding a deal, or funding a deal, or like, what would you love to hear? Like, you get 3 or 4 people reaching out about something specific. Like, what would they be, that thing that you're like, yes?
Right now, it is finding deals. We really want to find off-market deals. We're focusing in Utah, and we're focusing on the seller finance sub two, those off market deals where you've got a landlord that's either been managing for a long time or just somebody that's willing to seller finance their property. It's such a benefit to both sides, especially now with interest rates higher. We can
Hmm.
still find good deals. We have a fourplex at 8.35 interest that's cash flowing very well. But those are fewer and far between to find right now. So to be able to find the seller finance deals, we can pay them what they're asking for because they're willing to give us the financing that we need. So anyone
Love
that
it.
is doing deals in Utah, definitely we're looking for up to 50 unit properties in Utah right now.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what your buy box is right now. So you're looking for, bigger, bigger multi units.
Yeah, right now we're focusing on up to 50 units. We really want to focus on finding those tired landlords right now, and the people willing to, the more mom and pops that you ask for financials and they send you like a picture of one utility bill and they're like, here we go.
Like
So
financials? Like, Bobby left some cash in the box the other day. What do you mean?
I know we still own it and we're paying our bills.
Yeah, we
So
own it. We're good. Tenants pay when they pay.
yeah.
I love it. Well, that's great, Lisa. Well, we'll dive into our final four questions here and let you get back to taking over the world. All right. So, first question: what is your dream deal, or a deal you just love to tackle eventually?
Um I mean, that's probably right now, like if we could find a, 30, 40, 50 unit, that's a killer seller finance deal in Utah, that right now that would be awesome. So
Love it. Awesome. I love how it's like you already know, like you're like, that's what I'm focused on. That's where my mind is. This is exactly what I'm trying to do. This is what we're doing. Um, what's been one of the most pivotal books you've ever read?
man, I'm a huge reader. I mean, I've already read like 20 something books this year, so I'm
Awesome.
very, very big. But the one that recently has done the most, so there's two that I read at a similar time. So there's The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod.
Hmm.
And that to me was just I don't necessarily follow like the exact Miracle Morning
Yeah, the way he spelled it out, like his
abbreviation thing,
acronym.
but I do very similar to that. But I loved at night, I have a book I write down, okay, here's the three things I accomplished that day. It just puts like you in such a positive mindset going to bed, and you're like, heck yeah, like I got this done today. And just that kind of positive reinforcement of
Mm,
accomplishing things throughout the day, and then writing down, here's three things that I want to accomplish tomorrow. Because you already kind of go to bed with, all right, I already know kind of what I want to work on tomorrow. So like ending your day with those positive things and knowing already what your day is going to look like the next day. Like I get up and I'm not spending part of my morning trying to figure out, what do I have to do? Where do I have to go? Like what's going on? It's already pretty much spelled out, like, all right, these are the things I got to get done today. And that's been a really helpful and a big shift for me to be more focused and be way more productive.
I love that. That's a good one. That's great. Like I said, there's so many books to choose from. That's a powerful one, though, if anybody's ever not read it. Or if you have, read it again. Like I forgot, as you mentioned, like the night routine, the stuff before is really what makes the morning. I'm like, oh yeah, that was in that book. So good. All right. Third question, Lisa, what is one of the most expensive or interesting mistakes you've made in real estate investing?
That would be, we purchased a duplex last year. And when you get into like the 2 to 4, even up to like 8, 10 units, your financing is sort of between the residential and commercial. Like technically 5 units and more is
Right.
commercial, but you can find lenders that'll do the DSCR where it's kind of that hybrid. So we bought a duplex, and it ended up being over budget. There was things in the rehab that came up that we did not foresee, and we ended up having to sell it. And we priced it and based it on somebody buying it with the way that we were financing it,
Mm,
which was the income approach. So looking at our rents, what's the value of this property?
sure.
So we priced it based on that, not even thinking, oh, there's a good chance, it being a duplex, that somebody's going to buy it more conventionally, and they'd use sales comparables. So we had a $60,000 hit,
Mm.
to which was the difference of making 45,000, losing 15,000, because we based it on, okay, this duplex, it'll be income approach and it's worth this, and awesome, perfect.
But
Well,
then you
they
just
bought
weren't
it.
able to move it at that price, so you
They're
just had to lower
they
it?
they were, yeah, we were under contract and they were happy with that price, and the lender that they used was like, we will not use the income approach. We're like, we only do comparable, it doesn't matter,
Mm.
that's the way they're doing it. And as much as we fought, and at that point there'd been a whole bunch of other backstory things with it, but we were just like, whatever,
That
we
you
just
weren't
want to
gonna
be
like,
done.
because you could have backed out, because that's based on their financing. You could have not sold it to them, but you're like, we don't want it back and have to find a new buyer and all that. Is that right?
Yeah, that that's one of those properties. Like there's some properties you get that it doesn't matter the situation, you just want to be done with it.
Yeah.
And that became this property, and I was like, I don't care. I just want to sell it. I want to be done with it. Just take it, please.
Yes,
So,
I have a couple of those right now. Because
yeah.
sometimes,
So,
well, I will say though, and sometimes you do just need to get rid of those properties, but sometimes you just need to power through and then it'll stabilize and eventually you'll be like, okay, I'm glad I didn't. Because I feel like there's a temptation sometimes when it's like, I wanted to sell my entire portfolio
yeah.
and be done with all of this. Why do I do this? It's like, no, 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 no. Like, just get through this season. It'll be okay. But
Yeah,
some
no,
you got to get rid of.
Yeah, and that one we analyzed and looked at every which way, and
Yeah.
it was just for us in the way the debt was structured, it just didn't make sense to keep it. It
Yeah.
was losing money, and it
Because you had
just
like hard money loan on it
yeah.
because you're
Yeah,
doing
we
like
had to
a
pay back
rehab.
private money lenders and stuff. So for us, for the buyers, it's a great property. They're cash flowing. It was fully
Yeah.
remodeled. I mean, they just, and then they got it for $60,000
As you
less
said,
than
they were
they
going to pay. Yeah, the
had
great
planned
deal. They were
on.
going to pay
So for them,
60,000
they're
more.
probably sitting pretty on that right now.
Yeah. That's funny. And that's how it goes. And we wouldn't even talk about rehabs and ARVs and flips, and that's a whole different ball game. If we go back to the very beginning of our conversation, we talked about how renting out on Airbnb can be a soft way to get into real estate. And it's not just getting into real estate, it's getting into residual income. It's getting into making money when you don't even really have to show up or do anything, which is very different than wholesaling or flipping, because that's a sales job. That's a
Yeah.
construction job. That is not real estate investing. That is not residual income. It's using real estate to make money, but it's very, very
Yeah.
different. And that's why I like the idea of the renting out something soft, because it's the softest way in, but it's also got your mind thinking residual income, money being made when I'm on a trip and someone else stayed in my place that week and it didn't even do anything. I even hired a
Yeah.
maid. I didn't even have to clean for it. Like,
Yeah.
whoa. You kind of get a taste of that freedom and that power, which just the taste of it is going to mean a lot more than the $50 you made or the $100. It's like, but getting that taste can set you on fire. So anyway, all
Yeah.
right, last question, and then we'll let you go. This is a simple one as always. What's the purpose of life, Lisa?
Ah, man. To me, it's finding your true happiness, not paying
Mm,
attention to the life others live and what other people want and what drives everyone else, but really what drives you, what do you find happiness in? What do you want to do? Because to me, like, you find your happiness and it just makes you want to help other people find their happiness and give back and help others. And it just becomes this perpetual cycle of you finding your happiness and giving back and then them giving back. And it just creates to me just a much more fulfilling life and a much more giving life where everyone you're surrounding yourself with is trying to better themselves, but also try and better you because they focus on themselves and their happiness, and that just reflects outward onto everyone around you.
I love that. I think that was great. Anybody listening, just tap that rewind button for 30 seconds. Hear that one more time and take it to heart. That was great. All right, Lisa. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate your time and sharing, what you've shared with us. And I look forward to following your journey, as you guys are not stopping anytime soon.
We are not. And yes, thank you, Joe. Appreciate being on your podcast.
Absolutely. This is Joe Jensen signing off for the Real Estate Investing School podcast, reminding you to focus on your lifestyle trajectory and act accordingly.